No tissues.
I will.
But how we got up there, how you got it,
It's all from Hashem.
right? Did anybody else call it?
No.
Really?
Nobody. Just you.
Because I know it. As soon as I was
Oh yeah, just you.
A lot downstairs. A lot of
Yeah. When are you gonna start coming back on Shabbos? You don't invite you?
No, I mean, he's already passed them.
Everybody's been a little bit busy. I have to be in Florida.
Oh really?
And somebody asked him to do this, he won't do it. He's got a famous.
Where are you staying?
I go into, I've been there 40 years. Yeah, they have a shul right down the huge shul. Matter of fact, the rabbi is right on the front page of my town. This week.
Oh, there's an
I was there when we started. Additional money came from Weinberger and Abraham and Ronnie Cong.
Okay, non-stop work.
They started back in 1998.
Been a while.
He built something there.
Listen, I'm very happy with the iPad work. I have a
Big one.
low expectation level.
Big ones. I sponsored. I started.
It doesn't make sense. None of what you're telling me makes sense. So
One day, I get a newsletter. The name of the program I used to sponsor Sunday work.
that doesn't make sense.
It's really, he's a very, his kids went to the Shiur in Boca. He's a Rabbi from He married Zilber.
Still alive. Babies, the extra. Gotta be a good
He's a very rich man.
Yep.
And he bought assistant. He's very important. He was a conservative.
Welcome back, Moshe. I don't remember. You don't have
They took over these restaurants. People going to the restaurants.
Jeff, I like the figure. It's awesome. Good effect. Good effect.
Jay, you need more of these guys for our buddy here?
I'm also, I don't have one.
You have either? That's a busha.
The big one.
I would give you mine, but I don't want
That's the real question. Yeah. I need to take pictures.
It's a big problem.
I think so.
So first I want to thank Rabbi Rahmani, the family of Shiur, the Zech Nishmas's father, Rabbi Avinoam, and And I want to remind the Olam that for those who were here yesterday, and those who were not here, that think about begin Mitzvah the new cycle of learning one paragraph of Mishnah Torah Rambam a day. And so, in order to get that started in Mitzvah on Tuesday night, I'm going to be giving a Shiur, a psicha, on the beginning of the Rambam, which is the Dom of the Rambam. So that, I guess that will go out. I spoke to Aaron about it before. We'll send that out. And I'm very excited about that. Mitzvah we should be able to learn together and to go through over the years of Mitzvah. So let's get back to the Sefer on page Yud Daled. I know that we're still trying to get some more Sfarim. They have to be printed. They're all out. I'm trying to get some more Mitzvah. We're talking about the three chidushim of the Baal Shem Tov HaKodesh and Talmidei Baal Shem regarding this sugya of b'chol drachecha de'eyu, of working. And we learned that before the Baal Shem Tov HaKodesh, Rambam and Kadmonim, later on, that before the Baal Shem Tov, the understanding was b'chol drachecha de'eyu to know Hashem in all of your ways. The understanding was that one should try to do everything l'shem shamayim. So when you eat, you still l'shem shamayim. Eating itself is b'devet. It would be better if we didn't have to eat, but we do have to eat. So once we're eating, we should try to do l'shem shamayim, and so that carries over into everything else in life. That's not learning. That's not davening. That's not mitzvahs. That we try our best. We should try our best to do l'shem shamayim. Those great individuals who were Hasidim before the Hasidus of Baal Shem Tov, they were singled out, and they were known as people who were far removed from the world. They were able to separate themselves from Gashmi as much as possible, and that was seen as the ultimate ideal of a Chassid before the Baal Shem Tov. The world is a threat. The world is a challenge. The world is a milchama. All that's true. But the tachlis is to fight against the world, to be in that perpetual state of milchama with the world, to try to separate oneself from the world as much as possible. And if you have to engage with the world, you have to. You're a human being. So when engaging with the world, one should try to do it with the intention that this should be l'shem shamayim. I'm eating in order that I should have strength to learn. I go to work in order to be able to send the kids to yeshiva and so on and so forth, to give tzedakah. So work and any engagement in this world is seen as not as an end, as a tachlis, but as an emtsai, a means to get to something higher, to something better, because the world is not good, and meaning Gashmis of this world is not, and to the extent that one can have good intentions and make a good bracha, so you're able to on some level to soften the experience of life in this world, and even to get rewarded for the efforts that you made in your life to overcome this world. So The first Chiddush of the Baal Shem Tov is, and we'll see, it's very connected to the word De'ehu. B'chol dvarecha De'ehu, to know Hashem in all of your ways. So De'ehu, the Baal Shem Tov Kodesh said, just in a sentence, that the Baal Shem Tov Kodesh said, and we'll see more about this as we go along, that Da'ehu is the word Da, Hey, and Vav. And that's very significant. Da'ehu, Dalet Ayin, Hey, Vav is Da. The Tachlis is Da. Das means to connect, the Hey and the Vav. And that's the Ikka Tachlis of connecting this world with the higher world, this world below with the world above. Hey and Vav. Hey is the final Hey of Hashem's name, and the Vav K. Why it's in the order of Da'ehu, Hey, Vav, we'll talk about this. But this is seen as the Tachlis. And the whole purpose of creation, not as a b'diavad, but the purpose of creation, the whole inyan of repairing the Shviras HaKelim that took place before creation, and to be able to lift ourselves up from Tohu, from a state of Tohu to a Messias that's called Tikkun. All of that depends on our interaction with the world. And so that's the first Chiddush. Chiddush Hasheni on page Yudalit. So Chassidus does not mean running away from reality. It means having a different type of relationship, which we're going to be learning about. Chiddush Hasheni v'ha'omuk yoisahu, page Yudalit. Shebenosaf leChiddush HaKodem, that in addition to what we learned before, Hamakom shel b'chol dvarecha de'ehu, b'avodas Hashem, how b'chol dvarecha de'ehu is the tachlis of our lives in this world, to know Hashem in all of our ways. Baal Shem Tov Chidesh gam b'mahusu shel b'chol dvarecha de'ehu. The Baal Shem Tov was also mechadish in our understanding of b'chol dvarecha de'ehu, ad hofas HaBaal Shem Tov, until the appearance of the Baal Shem Tov, have sharos l'kadosh es ha'asiyah hagashmis, ha'isha b'derech klal, rak im osim es ha'pula hagashmis ke'emtzoi l'avodas Hashem. The only way to lift up our physical actions, what we do, is, as I said before, is by trying to do this thing, whatever this physical act is, by doing it l'shem shamayim. Ke'emtzoi l'avodas Hashem. As I said, as a means of avodas Hashem, of bringing to better avodas Hashem. B'midah kazu or acheres. However, from the time of the Baal Shem Tov HaKadosh and his Talmidim, Asiyah Gashmis yichol lios avodas Hashem ba'atzma. Asiyah Gashmis, physical life, eating and working and husband and wife and so on, all of this is itself avodas Hashem. It's not a means. It's not just a means to avodas Hashem. Again, eating in order that I should be able to daven or learn, and so on and so forth. But it itself is avodas Hashem. The b'chol dvarecha de'ehu is that is avodas Hashem. Od panim shel chiddush. We're going to be learning about this throughout the Sefer. Od panim shel chiddush b'mahus ha'inyan hu she'ad Baal Shem Tov, until the Baal Shem Tov, ma'amodah shel ha'asiyah gashmus l'shem shemayim, the status of this avodah l'shem shemayim, working l'shem shemayim, eating and so on l'shem shemayim, haya harbe pachos me'asher avodas Hashem gufa shel Torah mitzvahs, was considered to be, and it still is in those circles, to be much lower, a much lower form of avodas Hashem than Torah mitzvahs. The ultimate is Torah mitzvahs. That's the ultimate of avodas Hashem. And again, if you don't have a bravery, you don't have a choice, and you have to go to work, and so on and so forth. You have to eat to survive. You have to exercise a little bit, and so on. All of that, you do it l'shem shemayim. That's called b'chol dvarecha de'ehu, and that's terrific. That's the best you could do. But it certainly is not to be compared to learning and davening and mitzvahs. Luma zois, Now, this is a very strong point of contention between, this would be a big point of contention between the Chassidim and the Misnagdim, and it still is to this day. Luma Zais, although it's no longer referred to so much as Chassidus and Misnagdus, it's different Hashkafas Eilam. Luma Zais, but based on Midrash Shel Baal Shem Tov, in contrast to this, in the base Midrash Shel Baal Shem Tov Lamdu, She'asiyah Gashmis L'Shem Shemaim Yicholu Liyos Shabbos Erech L'Avodas Hashem Regila. That physical activities that's done with the right intention, L'Shem Shemaim, Yichol Liyos could be equal. It's Avodas Hashem. It's no less, and in certain ways it could be considered even more. B'mikrim Musayamim, and the circumstances, afilu l'mayla mimenu, to be even higher. Afilu l'mayla mimenu. Ev shalom akach. Ad Baal Shem Tov, one could say it this way. Ad Baal Shem Tov, until the Baal Shem Tov, asiyah gashmis ha'isi yechol liyos rak hechsher mitzvah. Until the Baal Shem Tov, all physical things could only be looked at best as a hechsher mitzvah, meaning as a means of doing a mitzvah, as a means of getting to a mitzvah. L'fiyah Baal Shem Tov v'talmidav, however, according to the Baal Shem Tov and his talmidim, ha'asiyah gashmis yichol liyos ma'aseh ha'mitzvah atzma. Asiyah gashmis, physical things, can be a ma'aseh mitzvah itself. Hagdar acheres, a different way of defining this, of explaining this. Adab Shem Tov Asiyah Gashmis Ha'isi Yichol Liyos Ketashmisha Kedusha. So, before the Baal Shem Tov, of course, they also had to shecht an animal in order to be able to eat a korban pesach. And until the Baal Shem Tov, you also had to take off the skin of the animal in order to have a Sefer Torah Tefillah Mezuzah. So, until the Baal Shem Tov, Asiyah Gashmis Ha'isi Yichol Liyos Ketashmisha Kedusha. So we understand that even before the Baal Shem, that physical things can be used as a way to get to Kedusha. The Baal Shem Tov v'Talmidav Yichol Liyos Gam Chefza to Kedusha Gufa. It's a different way of looking at things. It's not only a hechetimsa to get to a pair of tefillin, to get to mezuzah, to get to a Sefer Torah, but the physical act itself is a bechina of Kedusha. Itself is Kodesh. It's a chefza of Kedusha. It itself is a chefza of Kedusha. It's a thing of Kedusha. It's a thing of holiness. Now this, of course, will become particularly shocking when it comes to the union of intimacy between husband and wife, which we're going to learn about that sugya, which is, of course, a whole different perspective on the avod of Kedusha, of Yosef HaTzadik, where that the act itself is an act of Kedusha. It itself is a chefza to Kedusha. Not only a hechetimsa that there should be children, or to mekan the mitzvah of Aina, but that in and of itself is an act of Kedusha. It's a chefza to Kedusha guf. That's not only something that is used for the purposes of getting to Kedusha, but it itself is a ma'aseh of Kedusha. That's why we learned once by a Shalashudis, I shared with you a Torah, it was around 6-7 years ago, from the Arugas Abaysim, Schusi Elaine. The Arugas Abaysim was talking about the brocha of Zvulun in the Torah. Yaakovina says, Zvulun l'chayf yamim yishkai. All the other sons, all the other Shvatim are given Yehuda Gur Aryeh, Binyamin Zev Yitrof, and so on. They're given brachas about who they are, and only Zvulun seems like to be in Habuch. He's not given a bracha about who he is. He's given a bracha what he does. That he, what does he do? He takes boats out to the ocean. He's a merchant. He's importing and exporting. That's what Zvulun does. So the Rebbe talks about this. That's the Chayf Yamim. Why does it say the Chayf Yamim? The oceans, the waters. So I'm not going into it now. It's a very beautiful Torah there. But what the Arugas Abaysim explains. So what I was talking about a little bit yesterday morning, that there was that separation between the higher waters and the lower waters. And there's this distance between above and below, between heaven and earth. And that would change by Ma'amad HaSinai. By Ma'amad HaSinai was Vayeved Hashem al HaSinai and Vayal Moshe. There would be this meeting between above and below, between Hashem and the world and us. That's the tachlis of creation. There would be this meeting. Hashem wants the Shekhinah to be here, and that we should be able to engage with the Shekhinah. So that separation between the higher waters and the lower waters, so we know that the lower waters are crying to get close to Hashem. And the lower waters are in terrible pain because of this break, this separation. They want to be able to get closer to Kodesh Baruch. So the Rabbi Yosef explains that in the business of importing and exporting the boats, in the old days that's the only way they did it. So, like we say in the Aish Chayil, Mimerchak Tavi Lachma. Mimerchak Tavi Lachma, that the Aish Chayil brings the bread from far away. In other words, goes to work someplace, goes out to bring it from far away. Mimerchak Tavi Lachma. So, the Rabbi Yosef explains that heaven and earth are very far away. From each other. Ruchnis and Gashmias are the two furthest extremes. Creation is Shemayim and Aretz, two separate mitzias. So Hashem Yisborach gave us the Torah. So there was something that was brought down. That was exported. When you send it out, it's exporting, right? So it's exported from Shemayim. Hashem exported Ruchnias into this world. It comes from far away. So the Rabbi Yosef says that the further something is, usually it's more rare. You can't get it any place near you. The further away it comes from, the more difficult it is to have in your place. That's why you have to go mimerchak tavilach. You have to find it from far away. You have to go far, far away to get this. It's not pasha to get it. It's not near you. It's mimerchak tavilach. So the Torah comes from far away. It's exported. We have to import it from far away to get muchnias, to get Kodesh Baruch Hu. It's the Torah is in Shemayim. And we have down here in this world, Baruch Hashem, we learn Torah. Those are the Yisachars that are the ones who are able to sit and learn all the time, and people are strong in their Torah and their mitzvahs. But there's something even further away than Shemayim to Eretz. And that's Eretz to Shemayim. Because in Shemayim there's no inyan at all of it's. The Malachim don't have a musag of what that means, this world, and physical reality, and all the challenges of this world. There's nothing like that. There's no musag of it at all. So, the Rabbi Yosef says that in a certain way, the nachas ruach that this Rabbi Yosef going the way of Baal Shem Tov, that in a certain way, the Aish Chal, which means a Jew that goes out to work, Zvulun l'chayf yamim yishkain. Zvulun is given a bracha that he's going to be going back and forth with a boat. He's going to be bringing stuff on a boat. So he says that the avoda of Zvulun, which is to support Torah and so on, and going to work and to build Torah by earning a living. So Rabbi Yosef says that this work of Zvulun, that through physical labor, one is able to bring to Shemayim. One is able to bring to Shemayim tefillin, mezuzah, Sefer Torah, sukkah, and so on. And in addition to that, to be able to support Torah and Yiddishkeit and so on. So the Rebbe says that's mimerchak tavi lachma. This is in Shemayim. This is imported from this world. So we import Torah from the higher world, and in Shemayim they're importing avoid the begashmias, meaning Jews who work hard l'shem shamayim. That's what's important in shamayim. So Chaburah Yosef says that one could say, he says this, that in a certain way, that the nachas ruach in shamayim is greater from the Jew who's working hard than the one who's sitting and learning all day. It's a very shocking thing to say. That would not go over well in many places. So there's a certain greatness that comes through physical human beings lifting something up to Shemayim that is in Pneumias is more heroic, more challenging than sending something down from above to below. In other words, our exporting holiness is a greater challenge than the Hashem and the Malachim exporting holiness from Shemayim to Aretz. Our effort to export, to send to Him, Nachas Ruach, from the Tachtainim, from this lowest physical world, that is a certain Nachas Ruach that Kodesh Baruch Hu has from this world that He doesn't get from the Malachim. The Malachim didn't want the Torah to be given. The Malachim said, Tna hoid chal shamayim. They didn't want the Torah to be given. They felt the Torah is something that should be just ruchnius. Everybody should be Yisachar. Everything is ruchnius. Everybody should be learning and davening all day long. That was not what Hashem had in mind. Hashem gave the Torah down to this world. So Vayered Hashem al Sinai. Matan Torah is Vayered, and then Am Yisrael is Vayal Moshe. It's to go up. It's to lift this world up. It's the tachlis. To lift this world up. So what he's saying here is that by the ULiShamra Kodesh, we'll see about the ULiShamra again, this caused a lot of people to get upset. And it still does. That there's a certain Mila that the guy that's lying down, under the sink, fixing the pipe, there's probably a lot of that going on now, that's fixing the pipe under the sink, and he's like, he's singing Lulei Sarascha something under there, and he's remembering that the tachlis is to, as we're going to learn throughout the Sefer, how to connect to Kodesh Baruch Hu at this moment as well, to be an Eved Hashem at this moment, that in a certain way, at some level, that's even greater than the one who's sitting comfortably in the Beis Medrash and learning a Blat Gemara. Now, obviously, this would cause a lot of commotion, such a mahalach. And really, this is the Nekuda HaPnimis of what's, to this day, because that translates into many other things, obviously, not just the guy that's plumbing. That's a plumber. It translates into many things. And the what the Rabbi is saying is that this is the bracha of l'chayf yamim yishkal, bringing those two waters. Yamim is in plural, the mayim el yainim and the mayim atachtonim, the higher waters and the lower waters. There are people who have the privilege of being all day long in the higher waters, but those who are sent down into the lower waters and they bring up the lower waters. So Chaburah Yosef says that's higher on the totem pole of tachlis. It's to make that yichud between the lowest place and the highest place. Of course, it's very, very hard to do that. We're going to be learning a lot about how to do that, and that's why it's much more dangerous. So the job of a zvulun is much more dangerous. There are many more risks in being a zvulun than being a yisachar. Maybe that's you get paid more. But there are many, many more risks to being a zvulun. Zvulun is travel. L'chayf yamim yishkain. Zvulun is moving. Zvulun is traveling. It brings together worlds. Zvulun brings together worlds. The lower world and the higher world. It brings to Kodesh Baruch Hu nachas from far away. From far, far away. It brings nachas to Kodesh Baruch Hu. So that's what he's saying over here. Achidush shel sugiyas b'chol drechach hadayu b'Torah HaChasidus Ein in the Kudet studies. This Inyan of B'chol Dvarecha Chadeyu, to know Hashem in all your ways. This is not some side thing to give chizik to like a guy that goes to work. But don't worry, B'chol Dvarecha Chadeyu. To put your arm around him and say, Hashem loves you too. Don't worry about it because you're working Hashem Shemayim and so on. It's not a side thing, like a consolation, a nechama for somebody. It's ain't the good studies. It's not a side thing. Elohu chelik mohusi b'yisod chassidus. It's a chelik from the mohus of the whole yisod of what chassidus is, and the whole inyan of the Baal Shem Tov Kodesh, what he was sent to the world. Hagisha hachiyuvis, hagisha hachiyuvit l'maisim artzim l'shem shemayim. Positive way of looking at physical life when it's done l'shem shemayim, whether it's going out to work, whether it's eating or sleeping or husband and wife, or fighting in an army. Hagisha chiyuv is the maisim ha'artzim l'shem shemayim. He totzah shel tfisas ha'olam ha'merkazi shel Baal Shem Tov. It's not a little side thing far down on the list of what Chassidus is. It's at the top. B'chol Dvarecha Chadeyu is at the top. This Avakash Baruch Hu lios lo'edir v'sachtarim is Avakash Baruch the Shechina in this physical world. That's at the top. B'chol Dvarecha Chadeyu is the tachlis of creation. B'chol Dvarecha Chadeyu. She'ein shum metzias menugedes l'lukus. Because of course everybody knows that we spoke about this. The Baal Shem HaKodesh and all the Tamei Baal Shem could never, ever, ever accept that tzimtzum, that by creation, what tzimtzum means is that there's anything in the world where there's not God. It can't be such a thing. Even though there were others that did hold like that. But the Baal Shem HaKodesh and Tamei Baal Shem could never, ever accept such a thing. Everything is elokus. Everything is elokus. And when you're beginning from that perspective, from that reality, that everything is elokus, it means that work also, and eating and sleeping also, and even intimacy. Everything is elokus. It's not just try to have the right mind to use this part of the empty space of the anti-God reality, try to use this in a godly way. No. That's until the Baal Shem Tov do such a thing. And the musag, the idea that there is a certain place that's empty where there is no elokus chalila, that's something that could not ever be accepted by the Baal Shem HaKadosh and Tamei Baal Shem. Because everything begins with the she'ein shum metzias menugedes l'elokus. There is no metzias that is not elokus, including ra, evil. There is no metzias that's not elokus. And all of creation is everything's Hashem, and everything's about opening up creation and finding Hashem in that place, in that time. There is no spot, there is no place where He's not. It's all really one chiddush. He's just sort of breaking things down, but it's all one chiddush. This is the chiddush. Chiddush hashlishi. In the time of Kanas Chiddush Ha'otzim, Shel HaChasidus Shel Baal Shem Tov V'Talmidav, Shem Paschu Shari Chasidus L'Chol HaTziva HaRacham. Now, this is a social revolution that took place with the Baal Shem Tov HaKadosh that everybody knows. Again, this is just a Hagdam. We're going to get into the sugya right after this. The Baal Shem Tov HaKadosh, without any question at all, and there are even those who do not come from a background at all of Chassidus, that at this point in time, and even some great and famous Misnagdim at this point in time, already will acknowledge that the Baal Shem Tov HaKadosh saved Yiddishkeit. Saved all of Yiddishkeit. On a very, very basic social level, Chassidus now became the property of the entire Jewish nation, of all Jews, not just of an elite, select group of great people. but of all Am Yisrael. That means even if you're one of the weaker boys in class, can you believe it? Even if you're one of the weaker boys in class. I think that probably you all know that by Chassidim, even though it's becoming harder to hold on to this, in general by the Chassidim, the idea of having a yeshiva that's called for Mitzuyanim is something that Shmek Neshgir. Doesn't smell good. When the Satmar Rebbe, I once told you, when the Satmar Rebbe came to America, so I think my mom shared this with you just a few weeks ago, I don't remember, but when the Satmar Rebbe came to America, so there was a certain Rav that came to meet him. He wanted to talk to him learning. He knew the Satmar Rebbe was very, very big Talmid Chacham. This Rav came from that world, but that was very, very much appreciated. He was a Talmid Chacham, and he came to look at the Satmar Rebbe learning. And he shared with the Satmar Rebbe about how the Satmar Rebbe, what do you do? He said, I have yeshiva for Mitzuyan, as a yeshiva. And he said that he was in a certain way of saying how great the yeshiva is. He was explaining how there are two boys that he's throwing out of the yeshiva because they're not holding and learning, and they have to leave the yeshiva of the Mitzuyan. The Satmar Rebbe says, it's a kasha. He says, if all the other guys are so good, why don't you send them out and keep the two boys and learn with them? The rest of them seem to be doing okay, so send them out to go learn somewhere and stay with these boys and help them. He wasn't saying it, he was very sharp. And he was giving, obviously, he knew how to give a shtach. But in that shtach, it's a whole different worldview. It's a completely different view of the world. The disgust with elitism, the disgust with anything that smells from elitism. And that began with the Baal Shem Tov of Kodesh because for the first time it became possible that plumber or that wagon driver is he's a great person. He's a great person. He's somebody to be respected and somebody to be admired. His life is important. He has tremendous self-worth. Not just those few moments that he's able to learn a Mishnah. And then for that moment he's in a higher place. But every moment of his life is filled with Elokus. Benigud l'ma shahaya ad yameim shachsidus haisa sheyachas rak lechidei skula. Until the Baal Shem Tov, Chassidus was only for Yechidei Skula, for the elite, for the Mitzuyan. Only for the Mitzuyan. It wasn't for somebody that wasn't either wasn't particularly sharp or might be sharp, but his family couldn't afford to send him to yeshiva. He had to work. Until that time, Chassidus was sheiches rakli Yechidei Skula. For the most part, was Chassidus to be a holy person, a righteous person. That was for Yechidei Skula. That was for rare individuals, those who were separated from the world in a higher madrega. They were not from the riffraff. It was only business class, first class, not coach. But in the Beis Medrash of the Baal Shem Tov, HaChasidus nevcha l'tnua hamonis. Chassidus became a movement of the entire Jewish people, not just of a small select group of tzaddikim. It became Chasidus, righteousness, holiness, closeness to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Became the property of every Jew, of all of Am Yisrael. Nevcha l'tnua hamonis hapon l'kol shechvos hatzibur. That's speaking to every single layer, every single class of the Jewish people. There's nobody that's excluded from Hasidus. No one is excluded from Hasidus. Makes no difference what you do for a living. Makes no difference whatever you've done in your life. Nobody is excluded from Hasidus. It's called Shechvos Hatzibur. It's to the entire Jewish people. So the Chiddush that we're learning at the first two of Chod V'Echad Shina Suras Hayahadis, it completely transformed. Shina Suras Hayahadis. It completely transformed Yiddishkeit. Now, an interesting thing here is where do the Sephardim fit into all of this? The Sephardim always felt a strong connection to this. By the Sephardim, there was, for the most part, there also was this in the Chassidus of there being certain. However, it was much, much less than by the Ashkenazim, for many reasons. It's not important to go into economic, academic, many other different reasons. But by the Sephardim, there was always a natural respect for the hardworking, simple, for the simple person. And the Sephardim were not tainted by European culture, which is, by definition, one that is built in that way of elitism. And there are many other reasons for that. But with the Sephardim, there was always a very strong natural connection, feeling of connection to this when the Baal Shem HaKodesh when it came out. And to this day. But it changed Suras HaYahadis, the whole Surah of Yiddishkeit. That's what happened. So the Parak HaRishon Nilna B'Yachim HaKaros Medivrei Rabbi Sedim Marech Hasidiskus in light of the Darchei, and he's very careful to use, I've seen almost always, the Sfarim that he's using are the early Sefer Hasidus. Not the recent ones, not the later ones, but the basics. He's using the basics, Talmud Yaakov Yosef, Dagamach Ephraim, Marinaim, Dushas Levi, and so on, the basics. So we can going to get a very clear understanding of all this that we're talking about, this Chiddush of the Baal Shem Tov and Talmidei Baal Shem. She'asiyah Gashmis l'Shem Shamayim tofeses mokum nechbad b'avodas Hashem. That Asiyah and Gashmis occupies a very honored place in Avodas Hashem. It's mokum nechbad b'avodas Hashem. The nigud l'gisha mekubelas etzem levakshei Hashem hachasidim, as opposed to the hashkafa that was until that time, and in certain ways as now as well, in many circles, by the Mevakshei Hashem, HaChasidim is Ramachem Yahadis. What Chasidus have had to understand what Chasidus is in other quarters of Am Yisrael. How does one define Chasidus? What is Chasidus? Gam nirim divrei Rabbi Seinu Schus Erleinu. Sha'chidish shel Baal Shem Tov b'sugi shebechol v'checha de'ayom. That the Chiddush of the Baal Shem Tov, we're going to see that the Chiddush of the Baal Shem Tov b'chol v'checha de'ayom eno Chiddush mekomi b'mishnasa. That it's not just one part of his teachings. Ela shezeh yisod merkazi b'yosef v'taraso, but it's at the center, it's at the core of all of his teachings. Almost every Torah from the Talmidei Baal Shem is this nekuda b'chol v'checha de'ayom. Everywhere. The whole inning of Kriyas Yamsuf. If you look in Torah from the Balatanya, the whole inning of what happened by Kriyas Yamsuf. What's the inning of the Yam and the Yabasha, dry land and ocean? The Amidis Kasya, the Amidis Galia. It's all this Yisod. It's all this Yisod. The Dir B'Tachtayim. What does it mean that the separation of the waters and the Nuna Yama, those who dwell in the ocean, now it's dry land, and what does that mean? The difference between dry land and the ocean. And Kriyas Yamsuf. Every Torah is this Nakuda. HaChiddush HaShni b'Beis Midrash shel Baal Shem Tov b'sugi shelanu Shabbat Hashem Aidei Asiyah Gash was Enerach Achon Lavos Hashem. The second Chiddush that B'chol V'checha Da'eu Asiyah Hagashim is doing in physical life is not just a way to prepare or hechetimsa to get to Avodas Hashem, ela Avodas Hashem ba'atzma. Avodas Hashem ba'atzma, which means that the guy fixing the pipe is itself Avodas Hashem. Not just the fact that he's remembering Hashem now, or thinking about how he's going to get paid and he's going to be able to pay tuition. The act of fixing the pipe itself is Avodas Hashem. That act itself is Avodas Hashem. not just a hachon. It's not just a hechetimsa to pay the yeshiva, or a hechetimsa to build a mikveh. But the act of fixing the pipe is itself an act of avodas Hashem, l'shem yichud kudsha b'yichud l'shchinte, and that's an act of avodas Hashem. The Makaras of Indian Zen, no more parak shiny. The second parak we're going to learn many Makaras. Again, in Chazal and the Svarim, that are Makar for this Indian. These things are all found in Chazal. It's just that they were sort of lost, not put on the side. It's all over Chazal. You see, there's such a thing. It's so easy to happen. That's not, and one has to, even how this is worded, it has to be very careful. But you can see that even that which was once considered to be so honorable among an Am Yisrael, to fight to save Jewish lives, that was considered to be the most honorable. You see that was the Asik of all of Tanakh. And that was something that was seen as being a great honor for a Jew to protect and defend other Jews. How over time that could be, how that way of looking at it could be changed. These things happen very easily. You could put all those psukim. You don't have to put all of the Nevi'im Yishayim on the side, and many Chazals about who David HaMelech was, and so on and so forth. You have to put it all on the side. And Kilu, because there was no choice. What's David HaMelech supposed to do? So there are all different ways of trying to fix that up and make it nice. But when you just see the pshat, you realize how it's very easy to take something which is at the center of Yiddishkeit and to somehow marginalize it, to make it look like it's a side thing just in case. It's not something which is a central part of Avodas Hashem. Removing the Rishoyim from the world is a central part of Avodas Hashem. If it could be done diplomatically, that's great. But if not, then not. But that's the central part of Avodas Hashem. And you could say all you like that I'm doing that right now by sitting in the Beis Medrash, and there's truth to that. But that truth of the wonderful person who's sitting and learning, which is great, that doesn't undermine the truth that's clear throughout all of Tanakh and Chazal. And until recently, that is also Avodas Hashem. That's also Avodas Hashem. Shnei haprakim harishonim hadiyun hu yoseh tirati. The first two prakim is more theoretical, machshavti. L'chein haparak hashlishi. Therefore, in the third parak, this makid Yosef b'dugmos ma'isius, we're going to use more practical and tangible examples. How are we, in our lives, able to take our physical lives, and particularly when it comes to parnasa, again, Yosef HaTzadik, that's what this is, Chaburah Yosef HaTzadik, the paradigm of Tzadik. Yosef HaTzadik was the provider, was the mashbir, was the Baal Parnasa. The Tzadik, Yosef HaTzadik, was not the one that was sitting all day in this medrash. That's just the Metzias. It's Yosef HaTzadik. So, the Miyuchad is Ke Parnasa. Mi'maiser shel chol, l'maiser shel kodesh. How we can elevate our maisim of chol to maisim of kodesh. We're going to learn how to do that. I learn a lot about that. Everything in our lives. And all the bnei heichola, the talmidim of Shem, the talmidim of the Talmid of Shem, we're going to learn Mitzvah Shem this sugyan, and hopefully we'll start next week.